specialists in metering and billing solutions. We work with various local authorities, housing associations and companies across the sector to provide open protocol metering solutions, as well as providing award-winning billing platform. Sycous is 35% powered by women, which is fantastic for an engineering and software development sector, and there are mixed genders in every department. So that being said, I've asked some amazing colleagues at Sycous to join me and share their stories about how they've ended up in the industry. So we have Gina, our project manager, Ruby, our product owner, Angie, our onboarding manager, and myself, who's part of the commercial team. So we'll be looking at what we've studied and our journey into district heating, and most importantly, why we've stayed, what motivates us now, and how we've continued our professional development. So I'd really like to hear from you throughout what motivates you, what you studied, how you got into the industry, just your personal stories. And we're also really honoured to be joined by our guest speaker, Friel, to tell us about her experience, how she developed her own companies, and to tell us about her new documentary she's working on. So I'm going to start by passing you over to Gina so she can tell you how she ended up in our industry.
Thank you, Odessa. My name is Gina Carrington, and I work at Sycous with Odessa, Angie, Ruby, etc. I started my career way back when by working for an international freight forwarding company. Worked in the accounts department, got a bit bored by that because it was a little bit repetitive. Moved into the quality department and helped to implement a quality management system in air freight and European freight. Again, that got a little bit boring because we were just maintaining a system. Once you've got the certificate, it's a matter of auditing and just maintaining a system. So I was asked by the IT manager to move into his department and implement a help desk, which I did, and obviously employed the team to man that help desk. I don't know if I would have stayed at that company, but I was there for 17 years, but got made redundant, unfortunately, just before Christmas. Not good timing. I moved into a company which was an industrial laundry, again, completely different to freight forwarding. It was more of a customer-focused role. I did quite a bit of travelling, went out to see customers such as Walker's Snack Foods, which is PepsiCo, BAE down in Luton, the larger companies. Unfortunately, yet again, got made redundant just before Christmas. There's a bit of a pattern there. I have to say I got a bit tired of travelling and decided to take a job with a company that was based 10 minutes drive from where I lived. That was my motivation to move into metering. Although when I did start the work in that company, I didn't actually know a thing about a metering company, didn't know a thing about heat networks, etc. And if somebody had asked me the question a week into that role, what does that company do? I wouldn't have had a clue. But I had an amazing induction and spent lots of time with our engineers on the ground, learned lots of information, useful information about metering from engineers, from the experts within that business. I even worked in the HIU building team for a few days, so I know what the various parts are. Don't quite know what they all do, but I know what the parts are. I moved to Sycous, and I'm the project lead within Sycous, and I basically take the sale from the commercial team, from the sales team, and it might be a project where we're liaising with a council or a housing association, where we're upgrading occupied properties. If that's the case, obviously I would involve Angie, who's our onboarding manager, because we're dealing with residents and the communication with residents. The project might be with a contractor, which is slightly different because you're dealing with a building site. But at the end of the day, we are commissioning a meter or an AMR system making sure everything reads. And at that point, once everything's reading, we would hand over to our onboarding team, which would be Angie and her team. Don't really get involved much with MabDeck from my perspective, but when a client asks questions, I can always call on Ruby and her team to answer them. So basically, that's how I ended up in metering and billing. Odd journey, but I find that it's a varied role, which is something that does motivate me. And I do like a challenge, and each project brings its own rewards, its own challenges, and everything could be different every day or every week, which is why I have continued working in this industry. And that is me.
Thank you, Gina. I think it is Ruby next.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm Ruby. I've been a product owner at Sycous for about a year, but I've been working in the industry for about 3 years in total. I actually studied German and linguistics at uni, and then the whole plan was for me to go into further education and to do some German translation. But after uni, I decided that I wanted to get a job instead, so I ended up applying for Sycous. And yeah, I guess I kind of ended up in the industry as well. So my background from working part-time jobs throughout uni was in customer service. So that's what I ended up applying to do here. My first role at Sycous was a customer support coordinator. And again, I knew absolutely nothing about the industry at that stage. I think I even remember saying in my interview that I didn't know a lot about meters at all, but then I was reassured, that no one ever did, and it would just be part of that learning process. Yeah, so when I joined in 2017, that was around the time that one of the very early versions of our billing software, MabDeck, was released. And as it was such new software, Sycous needed someone to provide support to clients using MabDeck. So this involved learning the software inside out so that I could provide that support, but also feeding back to the development team on any bugs that I'd found, for example. And yeah, it was just kind of helping clients out with general billing queries too. So I ended up getting an understanding of different industry regulations, best practices, so that I'd be able to advise customers on how they should be billing their residents. And I think this is definitely where I gained most of my knowledge about the industry, because we could get such a broad range of queries, and advising other people about what they should be doing meant that I had to know my stuff as well. Yeah, so I was in that role for about a couple of years, and during that time, MabDeck's kind of continued to be updated and improved. For example, at the beginning, I used to spend a lot of time doing manual meter analysis to check that meters were all working correctly and nothing seemed out of order. So as a result of that, we added an entire validation section into MabDeck so that the system will automatically tell you if a reading looks high or low or just completely incorrect, which yeah, saved me a lot of time, and our clients now use that as well to do the same thing. I then moved into my current role as a product owner in the Sycous development team. So that involves more speaking to clients about the development work they require or would like to see on the system. And then, yeah, we're very open to feedback, and that's something we like to discuss with clients regularly, so we can get a good idea of the areas of the system that need to be improved. For example, recently we've had a lot of feedback and feature requests linked to credit control and reporting. So both of those areas we've scheduled in to be overhauled next year. I think one of the reasons that I wanted to be part of the development team was so I could be more involved in what we develop and the areas of the system that we work on or the features we build. Whereas working in the support side of things, you don't have so much involvement in that. Yeah, so some of the projects that we've been working on this year include the serverless statement generator. So that's going to help clients who have quite a broad range of customers to make their billing processes faster and generally just a lot more reliable and easier to use. We've also been working on the My Sycous app, so that's due to launch next year. And that's an app for residents to be able to log in to view their statements and their usage, for example. And that's just to follow on from the launch of mysycous.com earlier in the year. So that's been great for me as part of the product owner role to get involved with the kind of the features that the residents will need to use in the app, for example. And yeah, essentially the end goal for that is to make the consumer experience pretty much a seamless process, and give them all the information they need to manage their energy. Yeah, so that's kind of a quick introduction to how I ended up here and what I do. So thank you.
Thanks, Ruby. And Angie, if you'd like to share yours.
Sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Angie, and I'm currently working as an onboarding manager here at Sycous, and I also work closely with our customer support team. I've been in the industry for around a year now, and actually I used to study Chinese and linguistics at the university at Leeds before. I've been always very keen on learning foreign languages, and actually wanted to work as a translator in the future. Actually, I speak a few foreign languages. So I speak Polish, which is my first language. English, obviously. Other than that, a little bit of Russian, and got some basic from German and Portuguese as well. And obviously, it was supposed to be Chinese. I even spent a year half a year abroad on a student exchange in China. But it actually made me realize that I don't want to work in the language industry professionally, and just wanted to work in something else. Career-wise. And in terms of jobs, my first proper job was administrator role in a primary school. It was still back in Poland before I moved to England. My main duties was pretty much managing all of the school paperwork, as well as assisting the head teacher with his duties, so like sending emails, reports, letters, taking phone calls. And I think that I've learned a lot of skills that I'm actually still using now in my current role. Some office skills, obviously. And what was, I think, great in that role is that I used to work together with my mom, and I learned a lot from her. She was just a great role model to work with. And after that, I moved to England, started university, and after university, I've gone to London. In London, I started working as a learning support officer in a college. That role involved helping to enroll people onto college courses. It was mostly beauty courses or English language courses, and I found that role really valuable for my future career within the customer support industry, because that role pretty much proved me how important it is to offer people good guidance and support, especially that in this particular role, we had people coming from different backgrounds, different countries, sometimes with some learning difficulties, who really needed our additional support. They were often working in industries that they didn't really enjoy, and it just felt great to know that by helping them with choosing the right course, I can have actually a great impact onto their future lives, and it was just a very rewarding. And I think because of that, I have then also joined the customer support role in Sycous. This has happened when I moved back to Leeds. Similarly to Ruby, I worked as a customer support coordinator, and that role also involved supporting clients with using our billing and metering software, as well as supporting residents and just get best of our services, speaking very often to vulnerable residents that don't quite understand, for example, what heating networks are. So again, a lot of support that we offer here. And actually, I must say that I learned a lot from Ruby when I first started, because she was already an expert in MapDeck, and she's just great at teaching everything about about MapDeck. And then going forward, I moved onto my current role. My current role is Onboarding Manager. And what I do is onboarding new clients or new networks for already existing clients onto our system. And this mostly involves providing clients and consumers and residents with all the necessary information, making their setup within the system as smooth as possible, making them familiar with how we work and what we do, what they can expect from us, what information we need from them to begin providing the services. And I believe that the importance of this role is just the fact that sometimes I'm one of the first people that new clients will speak within the company. So it's just very important to build a good relationship with them from the very beginning, so that they can feel confident when their schemes are going live with us. And other than that, I'm still working closely with the customer support team. So I'm still involved into responding to various residents and client queries, as well as, for example, scheduling works for our engineers for all of the ongoing projects that we're currently holding. So yeah, I think that's pretty much my story of how I started working within the heating networks industry.
Thank you, Angie and Ruby and Gina, for agreeing to share your stories, because I think it's so interesting that we've all kind of just accidentally ended up here. But if we meet the target of having 17% of homes on heat networks, then more people need to be in this industry, and that's how we're going to develop new innovative ideas within it. So mine's a similar story as well. I also accidentally stumbled into the industry. Interestingly though, when I was choosing my GCSEs, we had an extra GCSE we could choose, which was Twilight. So it was something that you did out of hours as an extracurricular additional qualification. And I signed up to construction and was not allowed to participate with it. So maybe that's why I'm so invested in the Divas and what the Divas stand for. But I never really argued why. I just said, okay, fair enough. I'm not going to build a wall. I'll take French instead, which I've never used, but that's okay. So I decided I wasn't going to become the next house builder. So I decided to continue training to be a teacher instead. So I was a primary teacher for a couple of years. And if anyone knows a teacher, you'll know that the amount of hours that you have to put in that line of work just kind of takes all the enjoyment out of it. But whilst I was a teacher, I did a lot of work with STEM. So the science, technology, engineering and maths project, especially for young girls. So I knew when I moved away from teaching, I wanted to be something engineering, something a little bit in that field. So I actually joined the graduate program at Sycous, which basically taught me everything I needed from scratch. So spent all my time with engineers on site or with colleagues who would draw all these diagrams about how a heat network would work, and then kind of just hope that at some point I would have a light bulb moment and just understand it. But I'm not sure we're all there yet, but we're getting there. So obviously from working with all females as a teacher to being in my first meeting for metering and billing, and I was just sat around this huge table and it was just all males. It was kind of a contrast I'd never really anticipated or expected. So I guess it's interesting to navigate that now. And where I'm at in my role now, where I'm meeting all these people from housing associations and local authorities and contractors and going on site. And my main role is helping people find a good metering solution that works for their system, and then managing them going forwards via MapDeck, as Ruby's already mentioned. I think our targets within the industry are genderless. We all want to reduce carbon emissions, have efficient heat networks and provide exceptional customer service to the residents who are on the heat networks. So I would have loved to have known more about the industry when I was younger. Maybe I would have studied something, a degree that I would be still using today, but I think it's important young people and women know it's an opportunity worth exploring. So that being said, I'm going to pass you over to Faye to tell us her story into the industry and also what she's doing about advertising our industry.
Hiya, thanks Odessa. Do let me know if my signal goes a bit funny and I'll turn the camera off. but hopefully it'll be okay. All right, so where did it start for me? Well, I guess going back right to the beginning, I actually left school with only 7 GCSEs, and it wasn't because I couldn't do them. I just wasn't into it. I just wasn't into it. And I went and did a whole load of other stuff before. So I was an outdoor instructor for a while. I've done loads and loads of random jobs, like working in call centres, market research. I was even one of those charity fundraisers for a while. And it's funny because looking back now, at the time, I thought that stuff was just, just to earn my minimum wage, to go out at the weekend. But now I realise it was actually really important, because I think there's loads of skills you learn working hard for not much money and learning about people and learning how to communicate. And so, yeah, I didn't want to leave that off because I think it's important. I did get sick of earning minimum wage and I went back to college when I was 26, and I went to Cornwall College because they did a foundation degree in renewable energy technologies. They still do, and that is an amazing course. It's I did it instead of A-levels. It was a lot more interesting. It was very industry focused. It was commercial. It was real life. They had people coming in to talk to us. They taught us how to do presentations. Like, we didn't learn that at university. I can really recommend that course. It's great. And I got to live in Cornwall for 2 years. And that got me straight into the second year of a degree at Leeds University, the University in Leeds, doing energy and environmental engineering. So I went from nothing to a full degree in 4 years, which was great. And I didn't have to do A-levels. So yeah, I did my degree. It was, to be honest, there's about 3 equations from that degree that I use now, maybe even not that many. And I would actually say, I do lots of equations, but I would say the skills I learned from my college course at Cornwall, like learning how to do business plans in Excel, learning about databases, and all the stuff before, learning about people, I think has been as valuable, if not maybe even a little bit more. And of course at Cornwall as well, we learned about heat networks then back in 2006. We learned about energy cooperatives like Energy for All. We learned about deep geothermal wells and on all the different technologies in detail. So anyway, that was that. I worked for a housing association for a year as an energy manager, developing heat networks. And then I went into private consultancy for 5 years in Glasgow. And that was doing heat network developments, feasibility studies, sometimes a little bit more advanced, like DPD stuff. I did a lot of resource efficiency work. And I really started to realise then there's a lot of waste heat around. We were going into factories and power stations and all sorts of places and trying to improve the resource efficiency, so to use the waste resources, create circular economies, all that. And the waste heat was always a challenge. And to me, it just seemed like a no-brainer. Like, why? Because my family are farmers and gardeners and horticulturalists. So it just seemed a no-brainer to me that why aren't we using this to grow food? But there was nothing really, like no one was really interested then. And I spent years thinking about it and learning, and I went self-employed. Long story short, I became a single mum. I couldn't find a part-time engineering job. It was really concerning. I needed a new job because I'd moved back to Yorkshire. I couldn't get one, and I wasn't willing to put my little 1-year-old girl in childcare for more hours a week than I was working to cover the commute. I just wasn't going to do it. So I went self-employed. Bays took me in, HNDU, shout out to HNDU. They gave me a contract when I was self-employed, my first one, and that got me started. It was amazing. I worked with them. I still work with them now. And then I picked up other clients on the way, but this heat idea didn't go away. And so I saved up some money and I set up District Heating, which is a consultancy firm and soon to become a development firm. We develop heat network. We develop horticulture projects that use waste heat and CO2, and that includes heat from heat networks, because you can dump a whole load of heat into a greenhouse. It acts as an anchor load. It reduces the return temperature for the techno people out there. technical people, and you can sell a lot of heat into a greenhouse, and if you can sell waste heat or you can sell bulk heat from heat networks, then you can just about beat the gas price. So it's going well. It's been going for a couple of years now. We've just won an Innovate project. We've got some great clients working with Scottish Water, working with a whole bunch of local authorities, university. Yeah, it's really exciting, and you know, everyone's a bit nervous, aren't they, about what happens in January. There's a lot of talk at the moment about food shortages, so you know, I think it's going to be a big year for us next year. And now where I want to go with it now, we want these greenhouses to be community owned, at least some of them. So that's the big thing we're working on now. We're setting up a social enterprise to be able to do crowdfunding and community share offering, so that when we've done the feasibility studies of these greenhouses, we can actually finance and build them. Yeah. So yeah. That's me, I think. Oh, and yeah, really important, the documentary. So I'm part of the Divas group, and we were talking in some of our networking sessions about how do we inspire people to work in heat networks. And so we had an idea, you know, what about if we were to make a short film, a little documentary, and make it fun? And so, yeah, we've set the ball rolling on that one. There's a few of us, and we're currently talking with filmmakers and getting ideas about how much it costs and what to do next. So watch this space. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Fear. I really enjoyed your presentation you did at the last district conference, where we could actually meet in person. It was really good, really interesting, and it's nice to see that you are now moving on from not just advising, but actually putting it into place as well. So clearly you've had some big developments this year, which is really good. So I think for the rest of the session, we've got about 25 minutes left. So I think during this time, it'd be really nice to just I have some points that I'd really like to put to you all and just see what your thoughts are about being women in the industry. And also I'd really like to hear other people's thoughts and ideas and their stories and how they've got into the industry, if it is like ours, or whether they knew about it and studied for it and are here on purpose because I didn't mean to, but I'm not leaving. So what motivates us is a huge thing. So Ruby, you studied languages, and then you went on to supporting clients, and then now you're the product owner. So what keeps you motivated? Why haven't you left?
I think definitely at the moment, as part of the product owner role, it's seeing MabDeck grow. So I want to see it become the best all-around billing platform out there. Yeah, so it's definitely kind of putting all those new features in, taking into account everyone's feedback and making it better all the time. That's what we aim to do. And it's great seeing the results of that as well. Particularly when we complete like a big project and we get all the feedback and we can see everyone using those new features. It's great to see.
Yeah, and I guess because you've been with it from right in the beginning, it's nice to kind of see how much it can grow and how much different technology has kind of come into the industry just in our short experience in the industry, which is great. Faye, what keeps you motivated in terms of, obviously you've got your little girl and then your companies, and there's so much going on?
Yeah, I love what I do. I just really believe in it, and I love the people I work with, and I've got a team now. There's 4 of us, so I've become a manager. So I'm responsible for them and to make sure that they're okay and everything's going well. But it feels like we've got 20 years to, maybe less than that, to sort this place out, right? And I feel lucky enough to be able to be playing a part in that. And yeah, I get up and I can't wait to start work, actually. It's good.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that we've got about 20 years and it's good to be a big part of it. So do you feel like quite responsible being a part of this industry in terms of what that means for carbon emissions and greener?
I feel like it's way bigger than any of us individuals, isn't it? But I think the teamwork thing is massive, and I think I've been getting really interested in how people work together. In fact, there's a really, really good TED talk on it, which I'll put in the chat if you like afterwards, about how when people start behaving in different ways as teams, like helping each other and supporting each other, that it can really increase the way, it can make the magic happen, you know, it can make people achieve amazing things. So I'm really interested in that at the moment. Yeah, don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if Gina has anything to add in terms of how responsible she feels being part of the industry.
I think we talk about providing a solution. It's an AMR solution. It's a solution to the to reducing carbon emissions. And I think people who don't work in this industry think it's something that just governments deal with, and somehow magically we're going to save the planet. But it's lots of small things like what Faye is doing in her business, that I really, really do hope that that documentary does get to the TV. Mr. Attenborough comes on the TV and tells us about what we should be doing and all the rest of it, but it's those simple things. And I don't think anybody outside of probably the group of people in this industry understand what heat networks do. And then you watch a TV program that may sound a bit boring, but you find out that actually if we burn waste and we do this, then we can light a whole street or half a town or something like that. And I think getting that to the layman has got to be one of the things. So I can't wait to see that documentary.
I think that's a really good point, and it builds on something Angie mentioned earlier about the education part of it. So I think that's probably where I feel like a lot of our responsibility comes into it, because a lot of residents are joining these heat networks but don't actually know what they are. So Angie, you work more directly with clients and residents who are on these heat networks. I don't know if you come across any challenges surrounding that.
Well, yes, of course, pretty much on a daily basis sometimes when we're speaking to the residents. Yeah, as we have mentioned earlier here today, I think that not many people actually know how heating networks work, and it can make everyone really confused. So it's really important to actually provide right education and knowledge towards the residents, towards the clients, from questions like how metering works, what do we pay for, what are the tariffs, and so on and so on. And I think like especially now during the COVID times, that's the time that has been affecting all of the people's lives. Many people are just getting very frustrated with not understanding some kind of things. So I just find that it's really important to be patient as ever, be calm and just kind to people when explaining information. And I think what was also a great tool was that Sycous during these difficult times launched our mysycous.com website, which is actually a consumer dedicated website where they can find lots of information to help them understand all of the issues. They can also speak to us directly via, for example, live chat, so they don't need to call us. Not everybody feels comfortable to call us and ask questions. They can send multiple contact forms, fill in. Our support team will then get in touch with them. And what I think is also great about this tool is that there are also ways of translating the website to the residents. So for example, if someone doesn't feel confident in speaking English, they can translate it to their own language, or even there's a tool that would read a website for people, for example, who are visually impaired. So I think that was really useful resource for our residents, and I think we've got quite a lot of good feedback on that.
Yeah, that's really good. I think that's one of the main things, isn't it? So it's about adapting what we already know and making it more accessible to people of any background, if they roughly know what it is, if they've worked in plumbing before, or if they're actually brand new, they assuming the HIU on the wall looks a bit similar to a gas boiler and they've just not questioned it, and then they're kind of a bit confused later on. Yeah, thank you, Angie. Gina, so you manage various projects of different sizes and scopes, but this is typically known to be a male-dominated industry. Do you think that ever impacts what you do day to day?
I try and not let it impact. It does sometimes, especially when you go to a meeting on site. You go into a building site, which is, let's face it, predominantly a male environment. And there has been situations where you turn up and you sat in a porta cabin with a table surrounded by men, and sometimes it's taken people to take it. I was like, oh, it's a woman. But I think if you go in with enough confidence that you know what you're talking about, you know what you're there to deliver. I'm not an expert in many areas, but we do have experts within our organisation that we can call on. You know, we've got Russell Fell, who literally knows everything there is to know about a HIU and heat networks, etc. And you call on those people. Don't pretend. I would never pretend to know something I don't know. But it's just a matter of turn up, know your stuff, talk about what you do know, things that you don't know, take away from the meeting, and make sure you do reply to everybody. But to be honest, I think I've always worked in a male-dominated environment. Freight forwarding is particularly male orientated, and I was in that for 17 years. So I don't think it bothers me in the slightest. Although I would suggest that you do turn up to a building site dressed appropriately, because I once got told off for turning up in a pair of sandals. Didn't think about it, but I did set off to that meeting up from 4 o'clock in the morning. Did not think about it, and my safety boots were not in the boot of the car. Made me feel like a bit of a fool, but never mind, I got over it.
That's really interesting, and I think the common theme in that is confidence in knowing what you're doing and who to ask if you don't. Faye, I don't know if you have any experience with what you do, how you've set up your companies as a female in a male-dominated industry.
Yeah, I've hired a mix of people. So I've got three staff. I hired my old boss, Mike, and he's amazing. He's great. Like he works so hard. He's knows more about engineering than I do. He's great. I love him to bits. And then I work with a lady called Kate Fox as well. It's nice being the boss because Kate's got 2 kids under 3. She rings up, yesterday the kid's been sick, nursery's cancelled, so that's Kate out for the day. But do you know what? I know that Kate will go the extra mile every single time. She'll, if she needs to, if we've got a deadline, she'll stay up. Like she rang me up at like 10:30 last night. I don't mind. We had a deadline. She goes the extra mile. And do you know what? Other people would have missed out on being able to hire Kate, because they would have seen she wanted part-time and she got 2 kids. So I see it from a different point of view now. But I worked in male, like outdoor instructing was always all men. Engineering was often mainly men as well. And I met some really nice men. And I think you've just got to take personal responsibility, haven't you? Life isn't perfect. The world's not perfect. People aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. I think you just have to make the best of it. Don't complain. If you don't like something, leave or change it. That's it.
That's really interesting. I think it also ties really nicely with a session that's on at the end of the day about being an ally. So just about supporting people in the industry, regardless of gender or their personal circumstances. That's really really good. We did have a little story come in from Mary to you, Gina, talking about her background in accounts and billing, but having no experience of heat metering. So it's nice we're not the only people who have kind of fallen into the industry. It is a common theme. So in terms of what we would advise people who are moving into the industry or thinking about starting in the industry, I was really interested in getting a few thoughts on what you would advise people. So we'll start off with you, Ruby, if you've got any advice you would give.
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly simple, but it's just that you don't need to have any prior knowledge. There is a lot to learn in there, but it's the kind of industry where there's a lot of people who know their stuff, and sharing that information with other people, learning as much as you can and gaining as much knowledge from all those people is really important. And as long as you've got that and you've got someone who you can go to every time you need to ask a question, then you're good to go, I think.
Gina, have you got anything to add?
I completely agree. I mentioned that my induction at the first company that I worked off in this industry, I literally spent about the first 3 months not doing a great deal. It was kind of like that lovely honeymoon period when I joined a company, and I literally spent 3 months finding out what a heat meter was, what it does, walking around a building site in my safety boots, not my slingback shoes, finding out from that expert his element of the job. I spent a full week going around Oldham with various engineers, doing response jobs, doing maintenance jobs, doing commissioning jobs, all that kind of thing. And I think it's kind of like, you don't need to know a great deal to join, but once you're in it, then you've got to gather information from all this expertise that's out there, but it's finding that person. And there's plenty to read. I had to do the, well, I didn't have to do, my name got put forward to do the CIBSI two-day course, and somebody, I just thought, oh, you're joking. What do I know about heat networks? And they said, you don't need to pass it, but it'll be really useful for you to read and to know. And I was absolutely stunned that I did pass it. I thought, flipping heck, I do know more than what I thought I knew. Because you slowly soak up this information that people give you, and you sometimes don't know what you do know. So it was nice to do that and think, oh, I finished that, that's really good. But don't turn down anything is what I would say. If somebody says, do you want to go on, and if do you want to go spend a day with an engineer, go do it, because you will find out so much from that element. If you want to go and get your diagram from an electrician, I still remember somebody drawing a wavy line. I can't remember what the heck it does, but it's a wavy line and something to do with DLC meters. But you just think, okay, I know that that term exists. I can go look for it elsewhere. So there's plenty of things on the internet, but the way I like to learn is somebody tell me a little bit and then go read up on it. I can't do it the other way around. I like the Russell Fell, who tells me things and draws me a picture of what a pocket does. Who knew what one of them was 12 years ago? No idea. But it's finding that expert, but then taking it a bit further. That's the way you can learn within this industry if you're coming from a completely different background.
Yeah, I think I was given very similar advice when I started, to keep just saying yes to everything, because you just pick up something new and different every time you say yes to something. So yeah, I think that's really good advice. Angie, do you have any advice?
I completely agree with what Ruby and Gina said. I just think it's also good to do a little bit of research before you start. There are lots of resources that you can use on the internet, lots of videos to watch as well. And from my point of view, I also think it's good to just ask questions and don't be afraid to ask questions, because there will be people around you who will have more knowledge and who will be always happy to help you with the experience they already have.
Yeah, I think there's no such thing as a stupid question when you start an industry like
Yeah.
this. You just have to throw yourself in at the deep end and just ask as many people as you can, and you soon find out who's going to give you the answers for what, and then that's how you build up your knowledge, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Fair, what about you? Obviously, you're going to have loads of advice on your documentary and everything going forward, but what advice would you give to somebody who was joining the industry?
Oh yeah, it's not just my documentary. I'm a tiny little piece of it. I would just say, look after yourself, and yeah, and just develop yourself. Because like, if you're happy and you're feeling good and you're kind of growing as yourself as a person, like that shows, and that helps your relationships, and your relationships will help you work. And yeah, I think just, yeah, it's so easy, isn't it, to work all the time and run yourself into the ground. And I think sometimes just taking a break, I think breaks are as important. Yeah, I think that would be mine. And yeah, just get on with people, be yourself. Just, so I think that's the best thing you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in terms of having a good work-life balance, it's really important. But I think we've all had to figure out one way or another how to do that during this year, because for a lot of people who have been working at home, there was never really a clear cut-off point of, this is my day work time and now it's my evening personal time, and everything just started blending. It was Monday to Friday and the weekend, and there were two separate just blocks at that point. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. Yeah, thank you. I think my advice would be really similar to what you guys have said. I think a lot about asking the questions, meeting as many people as you can by joining network events like this. I mean, I've met so many people and people who me and Faye actually lived in the same village a few years ago, but just had no idea, because the world is actually small. So it's just interesting to meet as many people as you can, ask as many questions as you can, and just yeah, figure it out as you go. I don't know if we have any final thoughts or anything else to add from anybody. Gina, I'm going to see if you've got anything.
When you suggested joining this session a couple of weeks ago, I thought, oh crikey, Divas, what's all that about? And it wasn't until I looked at some of the things that you'd sent through to me that I understood what it was about. And I thank you very much for inviting me to it. I've really enjoyed it, and I think we probably know some of the people, and I can't wait until we can actually do this in a room again, and actually meet the people who I can see. It says the number of participants, and you're thinking, who is there? Who's that? And I really, really would like to do this again. And as much as I wasn't too keen on it, thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Odessa.
That's okay. I think it is a really interesting concept, isn't it? Because especially as you mentioned, you don't really get any setbacks and you don't feel out of place in this industry as a female. So I guess it's understanding about District Divas being just supporting other people.
I think that's it. And then the other thing is like, I always think you're not the expert in something, but you know an expert that is. But that group of experts might be quite small in my experience. You know, it's this person, it's that person, and the companies that I've worked in. But this is a bigger network, if you like. So the knowledge that you can gain is going to be so much wider because of the group of people that are here. It's just a shame that we don't know who they are. But when we can meet back in a room, I'm sure it will. We will know who was who.
Yeah, absolutely. And you also already know more names by joining the networks, which I found really helpful, because I'd only been in the industry about a year when I went to the first district Divas event. And then from there, that's how I learned about Fear and what Fear was doing. And then so many other people in the industry as well that you now see their name and you're like, oh, I know where they're from.
Fascinating.
Any other final thoughts from you, Angie?
Yeah, I just want to say that I actually wouldn't realize how enjoyable that would be to listen all of our stories about how we all joined this industry, coming from like completely different and not related, related backgrounds, and that we're still here. We're actually enjoying what we're doing and what has just brought us together. Yeah, like normally on a day-to-day basis, you don't really talk about your previous experience at where you used to work, what's your education, how you ended up here. So well, I personally really liked listening to everyone's stories.
Yeah, thanks, Angie. There was a question in the community post earlier about why there is a Divas event for heat networks, but maybe you wouldn't find this kind of networking in other industries. And I think that's a really interesting idea as to why we felt like this is a really good place to have one. But yeah, I found it really interesting hearing about your trip to China and Ruby's background in languages and Gina's accidental finding into the industry because of it being a short commute. Ruby, do you have anything final to add? Any final thoughts?
I think just to really echo what everyone else has said, it's been really enjoyable doing this. And it's been nice to have a break from thinking about mob deck development over the meetings we've had over the past couple of weeks. Yeah, it's never something I've really thought about before as to how people got into the industry. Yeah, it's also nice to see some other faces too. I've been working from home like over the last lockdown and I've never made a secret of how difficult I find it to work from home. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really nice to have a balance of what we're actually learning in terms of professional development and then just what we're learning personally development as well. I think there are too many technical webinars. At some point you kind of do run out of focus for them. Faye, do you have any final comments just to finish off?
Oh, just to say, I love the Divas because like it's about people, isn't it? It's like it's really nice to hear everybody and hear like real stories and not just about, I don't know, some component of a heat pump or something. As nice and important as that stuff is, you know, it's yeah, it's just really nice to be a part of it. It's really nice to meet you all, hear your stories, and yeah, stay in touch. Let's all find each other on LinkedIn.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for sharing their stories and joining the webinar today, and then everybody who has watched and listened. And there's still a community post throughout the day, so if you want to share your stories, please do, because I find them really interesting. And I would also like to thank the Divas, because they have built this to what it is, and it's brilliant to be a part of. And I'm sure Sycous will continue to sponsor this indefinitely. So thank you very much. I will leave everybody to enjoy their lunch, and I will probably see you in the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.